response to being overwhelmed by the stimulus, you are in opposition to it in an effort to survive it, no matter what it is.
So I know you're not meaning to say that we shouldn't be in opposition to neo-Nazis. There's another approach, right?
Right. And so to be in opposition to something is dualistic. And so this modality takes you beyond the dualistic paradigm. And I'm actually saying that we don't want to be in opposition to anything. What we want to do, which was what I was doing on that day in my home while doing very sacred meditative things, was doing lots of prayers of gratitude for everything that's happening that is profound and awesome and healing.
Mm-hmm.
And trusting that does have an impact. And all of the spiritual teachers on the planet, the very high-frequency beings, will absolutely confirm that it does. And we just fundamentally don't trust that because it's not part of our conditioning. We're not raised to understand the power of prayer and meditation energetically, that it could, Gandhi taught us.
Yes, yes.
That you could stop a whole force of a whole army with prayer and meditation. And what I will say is that we want to be very aware of when we are in opposition to something, we reinforce it. So one of the ways this was taught to me was that protesting the war is the same energy as war.
Mm.
And so we think we're helping, we think we're making a difference, but if we were just to take this to the extreme, using the example of Charlottesville, starting with the first gathering, which was the KKK, which I think only 25 individuals showed up.
Mm-hmm.
If everybody had stayed home, they would have been yelling at themselves and the police, and it would have lasted about 30 minutes.
Yes.
If that. And it would have dissipated. It would have dissolved because there was nothing energetic in response to that activated it and re-energized it and reinforced it.
Right.
So when you train with energy, you really do start to understand, and you learn where you want to be discerning about how you use your energy and where you direct it, and it really understand that, you know, when we show up with significant opposition to something, in my mind, that opposition created the platform for this extreme ideology.
Yeah.
And had that platform not been created, then it would not have lasted very long because it wouldn't have had anything to receive it and then to respond to it, and it would have dissolved and dissipated.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's a stretch for a lot of people because it is not part of our collective conditioning, but because we're in the early stages of a paradigm shift and this modality has come through, I also recognize that that's one of the things that this modality can teach outside of the therapeutic arena, is just helping people understand how they participate in things and how it reinforces the very experience that they have already identified they don't want to have.
Yeah, I'm thinking, what is that expression? What if they have a fight and no one comes? Or
Correct.
You don't have to show up for every argument? Or
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And so more and more that we understand energy, and it's specific to trauma, specific to the imprinting. And the other thing that I would also want to mention is I spent a lot of time identifying what had to have happened to these young men who had adopted these ideologies as a platform and a vehicle for expressing unbelievable anger. These are young, extremely angry men.
Yes.
And in the work that I do, it's because nothing was offered to them in their critical stages of development, particularly adolescence, where identity formation occurs. We no longer have rituals for our kids.
Right.
Where we reflect back to them things that are meaningful to them, not meaningful to us, but meaningful to them, and acknowledge them as a collective, how awesome they are. And in the absence of that, they're left to be vulnerable to adopt ideologies that have them feeling empowered through their anger and hatred and hostility, and so that they're not feeling vulnerable and disempowered. And every one of those that were most known as part of the neo-Nazi group, I did look at their histories, and it was just riddled with trauma. Particularly the young man that drove his car down the street into all those people.
Right.
I mean, his trauma going back generations and what he had witnessed. And so it's consistent with my understanding. So it would be wonderful if we could start to adopt some very loving responses to individuals who have lost their way, as opposed to being equally hostile in response to what scares us. And there's a lot of indigenous tribes that actually do that. There's a tribe I read about recently where at the moment that the child is conceived, the parents, they sing a song. Between the parents, they create the song for the child, and they sing it to the child in utero. They sing it to the child throughout life. They teach that child's song to the village. And if that child were to grow up to perpetrate a crime on someone, then the whole village surrounds that individual and sings them their song.
Yeah. Wow.
Because it brings them back to who they are.
Right, brings them back to who they are. And I realize that what you're saying is countercultural. And so I am remembering that movie. I don't know if anyone remembers Dead Man Walking with Sean Penn.
Yes.
And, Susan Sarandon. And then I think she was a nun in the story. And she just loved this man back into health, where he was so hardened, but at the very end he actually could have compassion and empathy for his victim and sorrow.
Yes.
Yeah. And then I'm thinking about the Amish who immediately went to forgive the murder of the children that was in the massacre.
Because they understand these principles, and they're very profound, and it is alchemical. You will change people through love and forgiveness. You
said it is what chemical?
Alchemical, alchemy. It's alchemy.
I see.
Yes, so it will change everything. It does change everything. And it goes back to the understanding that we are all defended in response to not getting our needs met from earliest ages of development through critical stages. And so if in response to us perpetrating out of that wound, from that wounded place, if the response was love, then, I mean, how better to rehabilitate someone?
Right. So as not to repeat and create that negative spiral.
And keep building prisons.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And the duality of our conditioning has difficulty with that, but I do know that we're moving beyond that, and I do know that our level of awareness collectively is increasing.
Yes.
And as that happens, and more people awaken, then these types of things will happen more and more.
So even though everyone is talking about how dire the state of the world is, you do see, Kate O'Connell, that there is also a awakening to deeper levels of awareness, and that there's a lot of wonderful things happening at the same time.
Yes, there's a gentleman who's not on the planet anymore, Sir David R. Hawkins.
Oh, yes.
who wrote Power versus Force.
Right. One of my favorite books. Yeah.
He calibrated human consciousness.
Right.
It was a PhD thesis, and no one, it's never been disproven, despite people trying to, just to know that this was real and true, what he had created and understood. And the fact of the matter is, collectively, our vibrational frequency is increasing. And there is going to be a tipping point, and that is part of this paradigm shift. And we will get to a place, not in our lifetime, but we will get to a place in which there is no more war and there is no more conflict. And I do believe that.
And you think that our species will last long enough for that to happen?
I do, because a lot of what's happening on the planet right now that people have identified in sort of a doomsday outcome, from the teachers that I sit with, they constantly remind us that the planet has been doing this forever. It's been changing forever. I mean, think about the continental shifts. Yeah. That would have felt pretty alarming for anybody that was around at the time.
Right.
Large land masses breaking off and floating away.
Yeah.
This is a very organic environment, and that means that it's going to constantly change. Now, I will say, as an overarching theme of what I've identified with this modality, is we are the only animals on the planet that are aware that our time here is finite.
Right.
And that sets us up for everything. There would be no mental illness. There wouldn't be any conflict. There wouldn't be any war if we did not know that we were going to leave this physical body at some point. And we're everything that we do through conflict, through war, all disease, it all comes from our unconscious attempts to mitigate loss, to extend life, to control our natural resources, to ensure that we live longer, etc., etc. And so, when you can go wide in your belief system, and when you can understand that there essentially is no such thing as death, and understand the ancients, this was the focus of the mystery schools, it was just to teach people breathing techniques, ancient techniques, and understand and become comfortable with the death process. Because once you become comfortable with the death process, nothing can touch you. There is no fear. There is no anxiety.
Wow.
There is no defending. And so it changes everything, including how we look at
Kate O'Connell, rest in peace. Right. You absolutely,
just for the evening.
Yes, you absolutely must come back to Just Relationships, and I'm going to fly to Charlottesville to meet you.
Oh, wow.
So, Beyond the Imprint by Kate O'Connell. Please read it. It will change your life. Thank you. Thank you, Kate. Many blessings.
So
and this is Dr. Duffy Spencer saying goodbye for now and wishing you great relationships.